What's up everyone, welcome to Akuma's Arsenal, and today we will be discussing vintage. So currently, on my person I have 5 vintage watches. I have a vintage quartz no-name brand watch that I found at a thrift store maybe a few months ago. I have the vintage Timex that TGV lent me, the vintage Seiko 7002 that TGV lent me, my little gold Longines, and my Vostok. And each embody, a different category of vintage watchmaking on the low end side, right? So first off, I'll be right back. Alright, so first off we have this guy. This is my Matrix quartz. Very thin, and very small. If you're familiar with the Casio A158W or 68W, something like that, this has the same type of bracelet as that, where it just kind of folds over, and you have to pull this little part up, and you kind of latch it in there and then close it. And as you see, it's a pretty nice piece. It's slick. It kind of reminds me of what are those little watches called? Not really field watches, but I think Marathon makes some very small watches that they make for the military. This kind of reminds me of that, right? And I found this at, I believe, Sylvia's, which is kind of like, I think I was with my grandma, and we were, I think she was like shopping for something, and I was looking at the watches, and I found this one. I actually found the Casio there too. Gave the Casio to my girl, and I kept this one. I haven't made a video about this watch. I don't know if I ever will, but if I get the feeling that I think I could make a cool video and you guys could learn something, I'll make a video about this one on its own. But yeah, just head to your local Goodwill, head to your local Value Village, head to your local thrift store, and just look in the watch section. You'll be pleasantly surprised about what's available. So keep that in mind, guys. Next off, I actually have to do a review on this guy pretty soon. We have vintage Seikos. Now this is a 7002. Look at that lovely blue dial. Review on this guy coming out pretty soon. So vintage Seiko. Everyone knows Seiko is a very prestigious brand, or not prestigious depending on where you are with your watch knowledge, because I'm pretty sure the average consumer has thinks of Seiko is just like whatever, it's Seiko. However, Seiko has so many different variety of things with their vintage market. First of all, let's go way back. It started off with World War II. So they have World War II Seikos, they have pre-World War II Seikos. Yeah, they do, but I would maybe check out Seikosha, which is kind of like a kind of unknown kind of little part of Seiko's history. Definitely check out Seikosha. As you start to go up on the line, you got vintage divers galore, you have vintage divers galore, you have Seiko 6117s, which I think is at the Pogue or something like that. You have vintage GMTs. You have just the variety of options you have when you look at vintage Seiko. It's pretty crazy, actually. Honestly, this is just scratching the surface of all of the cool options that vintage Seiko has. Oh, and Kausha's watch collection, he had a vintage King Seiko. So many different options, so much different varieties, and it can range from $20 from like an Indian Franken watch up to like a few G's. So keep that in mind, guys. Next we have vintage Timex. Now this is another watch lent by TGV. Now vintage Timex is a really interesting place to look, because they're, especially around this era, they're just so damn elegant. They're so dang lovely. It's Gibble Talks Watches has a watch shop, and on his he had a pretty cool looking vintage Seiko as well. Just the amount of variety. The thing is, these are not the most crazy watches in the world. These aren't the most well built watches in the world. But however, these have an elegance to them that a lot of watches just do not have. Vintage Timex is, I would call this, if you're a watch collector and you had one of these, just the poor man's Jaeger-LeCoultre, the poor man's, you know, poor man's Patek. Because it's the amount of elegance and refinement you get from a $35 watch. Pretty mind-boggling. Of course, vintage Longines. This is a 14 karat gold piece. However, there's vintage Longines from all different price range. Not really all different. Mostly above $200 to $300. However, there's steel, there's precious metal. It's all Swiss, and it's all really cool. Theo and Harris sometimes on their watch shop has vintage Longines. Just, you know, check it out, because vintage Longines is, I'd say it's kind of underrated. Some other Swiss watch brands that are pretty underrated in their vintage is Omega. Honestly, just whatever watch brand you like that's Swiss, just type in their name on eBay and put vintage after it and just start doing your research, because the amount of variety of Swiss timepieces that you can find for pretty inexpensive is more data than a Google server. Stupid. Next, we have one of my favorite categories of watches. One of my favorite, just one of my favorites, really. We have vintage Vostok, and by extension, we have vintage Soviet. Vintage Vostok is a really cool category. Kaushal had a vintage Vostok. I know a lot of people have Vostoks. It's one of those. The Vostok, in my opinion, is its legacy is on par with the SKX line and all of its older brothers and siblings. Just there's something about these Soviet timepieces that are just amazing to me. Just honestly, I don't think there's any tool watch vintage category of any brand that has watches for this inexpensive, this well built, this much history, and this much just anything really, just character. Look at that. And guess how much I bought this watch? $45 plus $10 shipping from Ukraine. Look at that. Just look at the quality and the craftsmanship on this guy. I think he's magnetized, so I'm gonna actually check that out after this. But it's just, look at that. Look at that. Character. This is what you call character in war. You want to get to learn a little bit more about vintage? Just honestly, just start off with what I was chatting about. And, you know, do a deep dive. Find what you like. And that's the cool thing about watch collecting, is that there's no rules. Who gives a foopy doopy? There's no rules. If you want to have vintage Seiko, go vintage Seiko. If you want to have a Franken watch, have a Franken watch. If you want to go vintage Casio, go vintage Casio. Do whatever you want. Like, you have, in your watch collection, you have freedom to choose whatever the hell you want. Screw what I think, screw what other people think. Pick what you like, and go vintage. Vintage is an amazing category of watch, and maybe I'll do a video like this on modern watches, but vintage is a whole nother monster. I'll finish this up with a nice shot of all the watches I was talking about. Thanks for watching the video, and Akuma out.